that way we can wait to work the budgets until all the committee members are here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to review just a few matters that are being addressed in the Department of Revenue, and in particular, some of the projects we've been involved in over the last year that will be of interest to you. Some of them are not very glamorous, but are extremely important to the operation of our tax systems. Before I start into some of those projects, I just want to touch on the data security and our system security systems within the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue has always been bound by strict confidentiality rules. One of the first positions when I became secretary was to hire a full-time information security officer dedicated solely to the Department of Revenue. And information security is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week mission with the department. Obviously, the state is very engaged at this point in time with the security of its systems in general. What the Department of Revenue has goes well beyond what would otherwise be provided within the state system. We have our own firewalls, if you will, that go many times beyond what other agencies would be using. So, and why do we do that? Particularly in the income tax area, when you have a voluntary compliance tax system, taxpayers rely on the fact that their information is going to be confidential. So that is why this is priority number one within the Department of Revenue, is security of our systems and our data. We are constantly testing, doing penetration tests, and it goes beyond the Department of Revenue. Obviously, we work with KSO extensively, but we also have some federal agencies that are involved in testing our systems because we have federal tax information, Social Security numbers, and then we're dealing with issues with Department of Homeland Security. So rest assured that this is a priority, and there are certain expenses that we talked about yesterday where we had expenses going up. This is one of those areas where funds are being devoted to secure our records for our Kansas citizens. So that having been said, I would note, and I checked with our Chief Information Officer last week, we, of course, monitor very closely attempted connections with our operating systems, and we're averaging 1 million blocked attempted connections on a daily basis with the Department of Revenue systems. I think last year when I was here, that number was maybe 250,000. So again, just very, very important to the department. So moving on to, and I hope you have a one-page sheet that had been provided to the committee's assistant last week that lists just a number of projects that we've been involved in. The first one is the continuation of the channel management modernization project. Channel management is sort of the front end of the processing of paper returns and payments that come in. And when I came on board, this was the area within the department in tax processing that I viewed as most vulnerable because the equipment was end of life and it was no longer supported. So we've been engaged in an effort over time over the last couple of years to modernize that, and we'll hopefully have that completed in August of this year. That's our deadline. And as part of this process, we are converting hundreds of tax forms to the new system that will accommodate this. And And what this is, what it basically deals with is optical imaging equipment that deals with paper tax returns, and then check remittance equipment that basically handles the check remittances to the financial institutions. We, on a given day during tax refund season, we're doing 35,000 checks a day. And obviously, we have to make sure that the accounts are being properly credited with those payments. So we think that this improvement to the department, which we believe will be helpful for many years, will ensure that taxpayers will have their payments properly recorded, and that just expedites the refund process down the road as well. And speaking of refunds, I would note that, of course, it's early in the tax season, but as of yesterday, we processed 99,000 tax refunds for approximately $45 million. So that's since January 1. And the bulk of that comes from the returns that were filed beginning January 29th. We received so many of our electronic returns once the IRS turns on their system. Their system was turned on January 29th, and at that point in time, state returns also hit our system. So, and refund times for an electronically filed return where we do a direct deposit of the refund, after doing our fraud edits for those returns, you can expect a refund time of between 3 and 7 days. So which is very, very fast when you look across the board at other states. So, so that's one of our projects. And again, yesterday, I think there was a question about expenditures exceeding the prior year. You know, when the pandemic was in place, certain funds came into the department, agencies and federal money. And so the expenditures that were being made using some of that money was for projects like this. So we did not have to come back to the legislature for any sort of budget enhancement. So this modernization of channel was basically paid with existing resources. And again, it will benefit the department for many, many years to come. Moving on to another matter, as a result of 2022 legislation, the SALT Parity Act. This particular piece of legislation probably accounts for more of our hands-on work effort at the department than any other program that we deal with. And as you will recall, the SALT Parity Act gives the owners of limited liability companies, partnerships, S corporations, the opportunity to have the entity pay the tax and then get a refundable credit for the tax that was paid. This means nothing to the state of Kansas in terms of revenue. This is done solely to allow taxpayers to avoid the $10,000 state and local tax cap at the federal level, which would increase their or lower their federal tax liability. So, and the reason this is very labor intensive is because of the dollars that are involved and the department's verification process. If you look at these numbers, and roughly we have maybe a little over 100,000 pass-through entities. And for last year, as of now, 16,744 of those entities elected to pay the tax at the entity level. And that was almost $400 million that was paid. The number of pass-through owner individual income tax returns that were eligible for refundable credits was almost 21,000. and actually 16,437 of those actually applied for the refund. The issue that we have had to deal with, and I think our taxpayer advocate's office has spent over 50% of their time now for the past year, it seems, working these refunds, and here's why. When the individual income tax returns are filed, they don't have what is called a Schedule K-9. K-9 is prepared by the entity. It's given to the shareholders or members, and it tells them what their proportionate percentage of that refundable credit is. We are not going to pay out a refund to an individual unless we know that the tax was in fact paid by the entity. We have to tie the two together. So there has been a delay in refunds for these individuals, perhaps, but that is why. And the refund amounts to individuals is pretty amazing. The average refund, I think, is over $16,000. But we have issued refunds under this program over $10 million to individuals. So obviously, we are being very, very careful to confirm that the money was first paid before we're turning around and refunding it. So, and I would note, and the chairman has been involved in this, we have some technical corrections to the SALT Parity Act. Again, the act should have no impact whatsoever on the state of Kansas. So individual taxpayers should be in the same position that they would be if this election wasn't made. It shouldn't mean anything to their Kansas liability. And these technical corrections, and they are extremely technical, make sure that happens. This is revenue neutral. So the next project that we've been working on, and this actually went live on January 31st, it's Assessment Connect. It's just a new platform that allows the state to collect property tax information statewide from the counties. It provides more analytical capability within PVD. When you ask questions on the impact of certain property tax legislation, this will help in that regard, coming up with estimates. Again, should be very helpful. There's several components to this. Obviously, PVD will have the ability to massage this information and provide reports to you. Another module would allow counties to communicate with each other, and it's just for counties. If you live in one county and an appraiser has an issue regarding a special type of property and they're wondering, well, how are we going to address this, they can look at another county and how they've done it. So there will be some benefit. The counties are very, very supportive of this. And then another module is a public-facing module, and you can actually go to the department's website and look at it. And it doesn't get down into the detail of individual properties, but it gives you, for that county, the evaluation increase for that county for a period of time. And it's broken down by classes of property. So this particular program can be expanded as we go along and figure out more ways to use it. But at this point in time, just having one data source where all of this information is compiled is going to be very, very helpful. And on that sheet that I did pass out, there is the link that you can see what this is about on the public-facing portal. And I would note that this particular project was not funded through the State General Fund. The department received a grant from the Information Network of Kansas because of the public-facing aspect of this. $2 million grant was provided to develop this project. So that's that. The next item, another item that we dealt with, implemented as a result of legislation last year, was in House Bill 2002. When taxpayers become delinquent, the department oftentimes files a tax warrant in the county where that taxpayer lives to protect the state's interest in recovering taxes. And then when that liability is resolved, the department used to send what is called a satisfaction of judgment to the taxpayer, and they could go down and record that in the courthouse, and that would release that tax warrant. They would no longer have a lien in place. What the legislation did last year, and this is, we think, a vast improvement, it puts the burden on the department to file these. They're called satisfactions of judgment. And how it works is that when we resolve the tax debt, we also collect the filing fee with the district court, $46, and we file that satisfaction of judgment electronically with the courts and make payment to the court electronically. Obviously, that gets rid of a lot of paper and a lot of postage. We had perhaps a little delay at the very beginning just because of events that had taken place within the judicial system. But this, again, we think this is a vast improvement. What we are trying to figure out now, and this isn't really affecting the department per se, but there are thousands and thousands of these warrants or warrant releases, satisfactions of judgment, that we have previously sent out to folks, and they never followed up. They didn't record those with the court. So when they go to sell their house, there's still this tax warrant out there, and we're trying to figure out a way to maybe remedy that for those particular taxpayers. Again, it's not really impacting the department or the state, but it would be a benefit to those who no longer really have liens or should no longer have liens on their property. It's just that they never took their step to go down and file that release of judgment. So that's up and running. One of the other items, and it's not on this list, one of the other items that we did, and it was effective last March, as I recall, is that we established a portal on the department's site where taxpayers can just go in and pay taxes. And we're expanding that into the types of tax payments that can be made. Initially, the thinking was just to deal with delinquent taxpayers so they would have a mechanism to pay their delinquent taxes, but then we opened it up, to other tax types, and it's worked extremely well. Since last March, we've had about 51,000 transactions, and about 200 million has been paid through that new portal that was developed. So, and then I guess just to sort of get to the end of this, one of the things that we have been trying to do is to develop the next level of expertise and management within the department that's going to move up. A couple of weeks ago, I made presentations, service presentations for employees. We had 1,400 years of experience that in the very near future is not going to be at the department anymore. And we are working to develop, again, that next level of managers that can step up, because you cannot hire people off the street to come in and run these systems. It has to be developed within and experience gathered. So again, just looking down the road, the next 2 or 3 years, there's going to be a tremendous transition at the department in terms of retirements. We have 40-year employees, 35-year employees, 46-year employees. You don't get that level of expertise overnight. So that's kind of what we have going on at the department. There were a couple of items I did want to just touch on that were mentioned yesterday. Just so you have a clear idea of what is going on within the department. The issue came up about vacant positions, and there were 48. That was yesterday. Today it's probably different. But of those 48 positions, 18 of those were driver's license examiners. 10 of those were revenue recovery unit employees. 5 of those were auditors. I guess the point I wanted to get across is that these are not positions that have been sitting vacant for a year. These positions turn over constantly. I think the median was 85 days, 86 days. It takes us 90 days to find somebody and hire them through the hiring process. So there is constant movement in and out of the Department of Revenue in terms of employees. Driver's license examiners is the one where the turnover is the greatest, happens all the time. And revenue recovery is another one. Those positions obviously are very important. Revenue recovery are the folks that deal with delinquent taxpayers and collecting accounts receivable. The revenue recovery unit last year collected almost $250 million in delinquent taxes in FY23. So that's what those positions do. Just wanted to make sure you had a clear picture of the types of positions that are involved in these vacant areas. So with that, Madam Chair, I guess I'd stand for questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary. It's great information, and I'm not surprised that you've got so many good projects in the pipeline. Senator Corson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here, Mr. Secretary. One thing that I have a question about and would like to see more of out of the department is promoting what we passed, I believe, I'm going to butcher the number, probably 2239, the property tax relief for our fixed income seniors and disabled veterans that we passed a couple years ago. I talk to a lot of constituents who are not aware that that even exists, that is available to them, and that it may be something that many of them are able to take advantage of. And so I even talked to a tax preparer in my district who did not even know that, again, that this was something that he should be looking for to see if the folks whose taxes he was preparing qualified for. So I don't think, I'm not putting the whole burden on revenue to promote this, but I would like to see more promotion. It's certainly something that I try to promote when I'm talking to folks in my district, and I know others of us do as well, but I would love to see that more widely promoted because I think that's a great program that is really valuable for a lot of folks. And it again just feels like the word has not really gotten out that this is available. Would love your help in doing more to prioritize that for Kansans. So thank you.
Senator, if I may, I think that we could help by changing the name of the program. There's a lot of confusion between Homestead 1 and Homestead 2. I think that would help because it's difficult to find on the website. I've gone out and searched, but I encourage us as legislators to promote it too. I know I have, and people in my district. And thank you. I know I had a veteran that had some problems qualifying. He was qualified. He just had problems with the form, and you guys went over and above for helping him for the program. So thank you. But
Thank you for your comments, and I'll get with our PIO and see what we can do there. I do know that we provide a lot of information to the counties, county treasurer's offices on this program, thinking that they might have direct contact with those who might benefit as well.
Thank you. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Secretary, you mentioned electronic deposits of refunds. On that topic, if you over refund or if there's a contested refund, divorce or something like that, does the department have the capability to not only deposit funds but to withdraw funds from someone's bank account?
I'm not sure I can answer that, but I can sure check with our IT folks and make that clear.
All right, thank you. I would appreciate that information. That causes concern, particularly if somehow or another you got hacked and someone started withdrawing.
And Senator, you make a good point. We do simple things to make sure that refunds are appropriate. If somebody files a tax return for the first time, we don't send out a refund unless we verify that that person receiving it is actually entitled to it. If somebody changes their bank account from one year to the next, we don't send a refund to that account. We check and verify to make sure that somebody else hasn't come in and is filing under that name with a different account. Simple things like that, refunds that are going out of state, we check those to make sure that we're not, again, sending refunds to folks who are not entitled to them.
I understand all that. A way may be to do like Oklahoma and have a card. I do have a question, Madam Chairman, and that is relating to something we had in the budget, the Electronic Databases Fee Fund. For the last several years, the agency has been spending more, expenditures exceed revenue, and you're projected to be at a zero balance in fiscal year 2025. How does the agency plan to address this over expenditure? And then if it's going to be at zero, eventually it'll be negative.
And Mr. Holm can help me with this perhaps, but some of these expenditures, we're just making more expenditures out of that fund than state general fund dollars. But the funding for that fund, which basically takes care of all of our operating systems and the IT needs there, we have statutory authority to set the fee to generate the revenue to cover all those expenses. I'm not sure that answers your question, but Chris, on the using this to cover some expenses, which can also be done under the statute, as opposed to using state general fund dollars, is that accurate?
Thank you. Yes, Senator, that is accurate. What also happens is we have encumbrances at the end of every year, and sometimes our estimates are not quite correct. So, and that's what goes into the budget. And so what happens is we start off the next year with more money than what actually reflects. It does happen occasionally. The balance in the fund might be a little bit more that we started with than what we had anticipated. And we never draw a fund down to zero. When we're balancing the budget, we're never exactly sure what the revenue is going to be in that fund as well. And so we just make sure that we don't spend more in revenue than, or more in expenses than we have in revenue.
I understand that and appreciate that, but Madam Chairman, when you look at a history of spending significantly more than the revenue, that raises a concern for myself, and particularly if the agency has the authority to change their fee structure, if their expenses are not, if the fees and revenue is not meeting expenses. I'm curious, because as you can see on page 12, committee, it goes back to fiscal year 2021. That was several years ago. And every single year there's been over expenditures. So I thought that I would bring that up and give the agency a chance to respond. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Committee, any other questions? I have a couple. I appreciate your comments on the SALT and just want to make sure that it is revenue neutral for the state so that it's a great benefit for taxpayers. And I appreciate you guys working so hard on that issue. I know this committee is going to see it this year or probably next week.
We have had returns come in, and we have sort of held off dealing with those returns pending this legislative session to clarify the law.
Understandable, and I think those taxpayers will just be happy to know that it's in the works because otherwise they would get nothing. So their patience is appreciated. I would ask you too, I don't know, we go kind of back and forth on PVD. This statewide database, I'm afraid it might create more problems than it solves. One of these days, we're going to have to take a deep dive into PVD. I get the same runaround. We get it with elections too, the Secretary of State and PVD. It's like, well, we answer to them, and then when you ask them, oh, well, we have no authority to enforce. So we get that circular, and therefore, it's just a lot of finger pointing. And so we need to delve into that, Mr. Secretary. And I also appreciate you, that is a nationwide issue on the age and the retirements. And we are going to see some major changes in this country, in corporations and government in the next few years, because the baby boomers are retiring. So, and we don't have that number of people coming up through the system. So talk about some great promotion opportunity. So thank you, Mr. Secretary. Yes. Committee, I think we'll go ahead and work the budget now for revenue. Committee, I do have one amendment. I'll go ahead and start with it. And it's to remove, I think it's 1.2 million for the information notice, or the notices. It is not in statute. The governor vetoed it last year, so I'm not sure why she put it in the budget this year. We have not worked it yet, and I know the House hasn't picked it up either. So I move that we remove the 1.2 million for the notices. Is there a second? It's been moved by Senator Tyson, seconded by Senator Peck. Discussion on the motion. Senator Corson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question would just be, if we do end up working and passing that legislation, what is the process and how easy would it be for us to then put that money in if we do at some point later in the session work and pass that?
It's very easy. We have the Vice Chair of Ways and Means on our committee, so he can help us out with that effort. Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if this moves forward, would the local counties also get some type of a notice that now they have to start allocating funds for this?
They already have the notice. There's nothing in statute. The statute was deleted last year, so there's no way, even though the funding is there, the mechanism is not there for them to apply. It's not in statute. It was vetoed last year. Any other discussion? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This would be of staff. I believe that 1.2 million was only in fiscal year 25. Is that correct? Or possibly, Madam Chairman, you know.
That is correct.
All right. So the motion is to delete the funding for 25. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Thank you. And there's nothing in 24 for the reimbursements. Would that be correct also? We'll double check on that, Senator. The language that was vetoed was 24. So, yes. Eddie has an answer to that.
The statute provided for those to be paid for tax years 22 and 23. The tax year 23 payments were made in state fiscal year 24. And so that's already happened. That money has already been, in essence, spent last fall, which is why, but that was already a part of the budget, which is why it didn't need to be.
Oh, that makes sense, though. Okay, thank you. It would be fiscal year instead of calendar year. Thank you for the clarification on that. Thank you, Sade. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Any other discussion or motions on the budget? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would move that we pass the Kansas Department of Revenue budget with the governor's recommendation plus that deletion that we just voted on.
Is there a second on the motion? Senator, it's been moved by Senator Peck, seconded by Senator Kirshen. Discussion on the motion. I would like, Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify. So the motion that's been made and seconded, that's with the amendment. So if we say yes to this, that means we are approving the amendment in accordance with the motion made.
Senator Reddy, the motion passed favorably to remove the 1.2 million. So you can vote no on this motion and saying that you object to that, but you might have other objections to the budget passing out too. This is a motion to vote on the budget passing out with the subtraction of the 1.2 million.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. And committee, I would just like to comment that I do thank the department for all their efforts to come in below last year's budget. I understand there's been increases for the last few years, but I know that you worked diligently, and it's much appreciated by the committee and others. So thank you. Any other discussion? Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we've all been working on this budget process for several years now, where the different committees have been doing that, but I would like to simply say thank you to Mr. Holm. I thought your presentation and the way in which you addressed all of the questions yesterday, I appreciate that. That was a level that we haven't seen in all other committees, so thank you so much.
You've got a great team, Mr. Secretary. So thank you. Committee, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you for your work, committee. Committee, we were going to go ahead and work the budget for Boda. I know Boda's not here. She's online? Oh, okay, great, great. So let's go ahead and turn our attention to the Board of Tax Appeals budget. Committee, do you have any questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Are we working fiscal year 24 and 25 together?
We are.
All right, thank you. I would make a motion that we delete the funding shift from the $250,000 of state general fund and put it back to the Court of Tax Appeals filing fee fund. And Madam Chairman, on page 5 of the fiscal write-up that we had shows that there is more than sufficient funds balance in that fee fund for this $250,000. So I would make that motion again that we delete the $250,000 from state general fund, and then I'll let our fiscal analyst or whoever writes it up make certain that I sound intelligent in how it's written, but that the money be expended from the Court of Tax Appeals filing fee fund in 24 and 25.
The motion's been made by Senator Peck, seconded by Senator Blasey. Discussion on the motion. So committee, I understand the motion, and we're trying to be frugal and sensitive. However, I'm of the mindset of we shouldn't have to file or pay a fee in order to file with the Board of Tax Appeals. So I like them having a little bit of flexibility with SGF funds so that they're able to waive more fees possibly in the future for some of the filers. I don't want to get them in trouble financially. That's just my opinion. Any other comments or discussion on the motion? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate what you said, and that is true. I just don't see a history of that having happened as far as contesting taxes and the fee funds. So this will be a matter of, from my perspective, negotiation between the Senate and the House down the road should this make it through the entire Senate process. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I do know that the Board of Tax Appeals spent less than they were budgeted. They are working to be extremely frugal, and I appreciate their efforts. Committee, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. All those opposed, nay?
Nay.
Division's been called. All those in favor, raise your right hand. And all those opposed. Motion fails. Committee, we're back on the bell. I think I counted right. Did I count right? Wait. Okay, motion 5-5. Okay, thanks. I thought I counted right. I know it's early. I don't want to break the tie. Okay, so Senator Holland.
Madam Chair, can I make a motion to move the budget out favorably?
You may. It's in order. Is there a second? I guess I'll make the second. Senator Hollins made the motion. Senator Tyson's seconded it. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Committee, I was going to work some other bills, but we are close to time. So we do have a lot of work before us. I know we've got a hearing tomorrow. Next week's going to be a full week. Committee, if we have to meet on a Monday or a Friday, which would you prefer? Monday, overwhelmingly. Okay, glad to know. Okay, we'll schedule accordingly. There you go. There you go. So any other business to be brought before the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your work. We're adjourned.